Good evening, and thanks for joining us. This is our last regular show before the election. We'll be doing a special show Monday night from 8 to 10 o'clock. We hope you'll join us. The election is going forward on Tuesday, and I guess we want to lead off by saying we know it's been a hard week for everybody, but power is back up to about half of the town, and it's anticipated that it will return in the next day or so to the rest of the town. And we appreciate all the help that everybody's provided to their neighbors and to the town. I think we want to lead off this evening by thanking the town manager and in particular Lisa Smith and Lori Bissett. The three of them worked tirelessly and quickly to get a shelter put up at the senior center. We were able to house the 80 or so folks that had no power and no heat and could not be in their homes on their own, and fed several hundred more beyond that. So again, I want to thank those four individuals and everyone else who helped out. Really, the whole community pitched in. Glenn and I had a special evening last night at the shelter. We stayed with Dale, and the Candy stopped by, the Sedlak stopped by. A lot of people came by over the course of the last 5 days to help out. And again, I think it showed that we really do have a strong community. And that we can all get together and work together when we need to.
Yeah, it was a bipartisan effort, and again, I'll echo your comments regarding Dale Martin. I think he did a terrific job. He canceled some plans to travel and ended up staying for pretty much the entire event. Not sure what's going on there tonight yet, but I think he managed the situation as well as he could given the circumstances. I mean, we had quite a bit of traffic last night when they closed or evacuated Chestnut Grove. Had an influx of probably double the people, but even people that were there to have shelter, they pitched in and helped out, and I think in all we kept people safe and warm, and I think we did our job, did it well. Yeah,
no, I think we did. I think there are, though, a lot of lessons learned. We are lucky. I mean, Dale was saying we're lucky that we've had a hurricane and a freak winter storm a month apart.
Right. In
the sense that we're learning stuff now that we don't want to have to relearn in January or February, when it could be a lot colder and we could have a lot more people that need to be taken care of.
Right.
So it's our hope as we move forward and resolve the outstanding issues with the school board in particular. I mean, the ideal thing would be to have a generator at Pearson School and use that as a shelter for the broader community.
Right.
Because a lot of people still probably haven't had a shower yet.
Right.
They may have had some form of a warm meal, but it would be a much needed add for the community if we ever had a serious event like that in a cold snap.
Yeah, and that's one thing we said. We talked about at length. Had this happened in January, it really would have been a problem.
Right. Yeah.
And again, the ideas that came back and forth amongst our group last night was that it's a learning experience. It's part of what your job is here is to evaluate situations and try to make them better as best you can. And I think that Dale will put together an action plan for next time, and the community will be better prepared
for it. Right. I just got to echo what you said, because I said this right along. Thank God this wasn't January, February with sub-zero temperatures. I mean, as bad as it is, and continues to be, it would have been much, much worse with frigid temperatures.
You really would have had to, and even that walk, because I walked a few people from the senior center back over to Chestnut Grove. Some of them were dressed warmly, but a few of them really weren't. And even
many of them were in their pajamas.
Yeah,
I mean, they were
exactly.
In bed.
And
it
the
was
fact
9
that
o'clock.
a few of them being as feeble as they are, that was quite a hike. And anybody that had to travel any distance, and if it was bitter cold, you really would have had a situation on your hands. But
and so, I mean, I think I think I can speak fairly for the Democrats. We know it's necessary to set up. It was for the resources that we had. I think everybody did a great job, but we know it's necessary to plan for a more dramatic event.
Right.
And we need to work together to do that. We absolutely do.
Right.
But I think given the resources that we had, everybody did a good job.
And interestingly, this event threw a lot of stuff at us. I mean, the fact that you didn't have heat, didn't have phones, people not necessarily, we even took in, I think, from people from out of district,
yeah,
out of
from
town.
Harrington, right.
I know Dale said that Park Hampstead sent us a individual that needed help, and I think there was some kids from Harwinton too that ended up in Winston here, but were supposed to be or wanted to be sheltered in Torrington, but because they were closed, because they had gotten powered up, they moved up here. But certainly a lot of different things to evaluate and factor into however you put your plan together.
Well, I think that again the right amount of flexibility was shown in terms of accommodating people and saying, even though this person doesn't live within the boundaries that represent Winchester, we're not going to send this person out into the night because there's nowhere for them to go and there is no communication. I mean, similarly, I went, my husband James and I went down and walked through the Gay Street housing project, and I give them a lot of credit, the ones that couldn't make it up to the senior center and wanted to, eat the food that was in their freezers and their refrigerators. They banded together and used their small community center down there, and they had a gas grill out and they were making food. And we helped them get some, vegetables and fruit and juice and some of the things they hadn't been able to have because they'd been mainly having meat and potatoes, literally. But they were a hearty little group. I mean, they were really working together. They pulled together as their own sort of microcosm of community. They had gone around, knocked on all each other's doors too to check on each other, and that's a community with a lot of fragile individuals. So I think the community showed very well, even though it was a pretty unusual and a pretty tough time.
It was. But I think everybody came through safe and sound. I think that's,
yeah, exactly.
Silver lining to a bad situation.
Yeah,
Right.
which is the important thing. Well, we did have the debate last Thursday. It's hard to believe that it was only last Thursday because so much has happened. But I think there are a couple of takeaways from the debate that we want to focus on this evening, and obviously this is our wrap-up show in terms of communicating to you our thoughts for what we'd like to see happen with the town and how we'd like to work with you to make it happen. The overwhelming point of the debate was finances, 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 money, money, money. I think there were 12 questions, and 10 of the questions were about money. So teenagers definitely get it. You need to know where your money's coming from, and you need to know what's going on. And I think what we want to state unequivocally here tonight, which we stated in the debate, is that there will be no supplemental tax under our leadership. You will not see a supplemental tax that will fund, the $1.3 million that the Board of Education is demanding right now from the town. We will, there is a hearing coming up in December, and we will make the case for the first time to the State Board of Ed and to the new Commissioner of Education that we did what they told us they were going to do. We followed what they told us their game plan was. They said they were closing a building. There are real savings from Gilbert. Those numbers are over $1.5 million. And we need to, they set the game plan. We're just playing by their game plan, and they need to stick to the rules. And the other, I wasn't surprised to hear the pushback from the other side of, because the majority of those folks are either Board of Ed members or sitting teachers. I still am troubled that the first thing that ever comes out of Candy's mouth is, I'm an educator. Because in the sense that if you want to be just an educator and that's your priority, that's fine. But then don't put yourself in the position of being the mayor of the town. And advocate for education and be an educator. But don't put yourself in a conflict and then make the wrong choice for the town. And in particular, when confronted with the fact that, quite frankly, folks, we really do have a problem on the school side. We have no accounting for $43 million, 2 years of finances. And at this point, at this juncture, as you may recall from the emails that were uncovered courtesy of the Winstead Journal, there may have been actual misspending of the federal ARRA funds. And that is a real problem for us as a community.
And just to intercede for a minute, and that's something that we thought was a problem almost from the beginning. We thought that there were problems with the ARRA fund, excuse me, and we just, to this day, we can't get an answer. There was a 8.5 teachers supposedly hired, but there's no documentation. There's absolutely no backup or documentation for anything, and that's a huge problem. Whether they have it and they won't give it to us, or whether they just don't have it at all. If they had it at one time and they ran through the shredder, I don't know. But in Bloom Shapiro, Vanessa has been on their case to supply them documentation, and time after time after time.
To have them supply documentation to her.
To her, right. So she can verify some of this. And time after time, it's always, we've given all the information, now we're waiting for her, for Vanessa. And Vanessa will email back that, she hasn't received the documentation that she asked for. And I mean, this has just been going,
well, it's like
they've been throwing the ball back and forth for 18 months.
Well, it's like the teacher says, okay, we're reading War and Peace, and I expect the book report on War and Peace. Well, here's the Cat in the Hat. Well, I asked for War and Peace,
right.
and that's what was assigned.
Right.
Well, but here's the Cat in the Hat.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, and this is what I find most disturbing about basically the mayor and her team, we're beyond a point where we should just sit down and come clean. Tell us what happened. Is it $5? Is it $5,000? Is it $500,000? Is it the whole $2 million? What don't you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, this email frightened me when I found it. From Sue Hofnagel to Doc Dutton and Chris Royer, and this is from July. Mm-hmm. It's from July 27th. It was the day before she sat in front of you and said, we have no idea what you're talking about. Just spoke to Blaze. Not good. Looks like there's still a chance that we'll have ARA funds not being applied, with the result that the expense will hit the fund balance. No idea the magnitude, but it won't bankrupt the town. Blithely from Blaze. I found the conversation disturbing. Well, she should. Mm-hmm. And the next thing should have been, what I don't understand, she's an attorney, she's a smart woman. Mm-hmm. The next night she should have told you, we have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right. But then she denied the day after that in front of Senator Rohrabaugh and the State Board of Ed. I mean, she says herself that she found the conversation disturbing. Well, I find it more disturbing that, she didn't disclose this to the Board of Selectmen, which is the Board of Finance, and say, listen, I think there's a problem. We need to work together to resolve this. Right. But, they've gone off on their own reservation. They've held us at bay. They've been assisted, with candy, and so it's just, and then they want to know why there's always this, why is there so much friction? Why is there so much infighting? We're trying to stand up for the taxpayers and what's right. We want all the cards on the table. We want to show the people where the money comes from. More importantly, where it's going. Sure. We're not anti-education. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Right. And I hate having to say this over and over and over again, but because we get this stuff thrown at us from the other side of the court, and there are times that we have to defend ourselves. And, that's just the way that it is.
Well, right. And to add insult to injury, the letter that the superintendent sent home at the direction of the Board of Education, right. Oh my gosh, if we don't get that money, we're going to lay off a whole bunch of classroom teachers. We're not going to deal with the mold issue at Hinsdale School. We're not going to close a building. We're not going to talk about the fact that we've built a huge special ed infrastructure that's multiples of the number of children that we have that have special needs. Mm-hmm. We're not going to talk about the fact that we have nine people with the title of behaviorist or psychologist, and Torrington has 3 times as many kids and 3 of those people.
Right. We have 3 times as many staff that's doing
and 1/3 the kids.
And 1/3 the kids.
But that works with 3 times the building space for 1/3 the kids. So.
But sadly, you can't challenge that. I mean, if you try to have a rational discussion about any of this.
No, you can challenge it, but you can't have a rational discussion.
Kind of same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still kind of, you hit that brick wall. You just cannot have a conversation about it. They don't want to listen.
But we should be.
Yeah, no, and we have. I think that's why we're continuing to reiterate the points. But
they don't want to talk about the audit. We brought it up. I think each of us brought it up 3 or 4 times during the debate on Thursday. Mm-hmm. They did not respond with one answer. All they kept saying was 1.3, 1.3, The audit's not optional.
Right.
Okay. Even if you out there as residents and don't feel like you need to know or want to know where the money went, the feds have to know where the money went. And if we don't tell them where it went, they're going to want it back. Right. And that's the part that I think it feels like it's coats flying over people's heads. They're just not, they're not absorbing that.
Well, I think there's just so much information that's being thrown out there, but the 1.3, probably just about 95% of the people in Winsted could recite that number. But we're looking at a bigger problem. I mean, if they have misappropriated these ARRA funds from the government, we're going to be getting a letter in the mail or knock on a door saying, we want the money back, plus penalty, plus an interest. And the Board of Ed members and their, posse just don't seem to care.
Well, and the other thing
we'll take it from the fund balance and blame it on the Republicans. Right.
Well, and the thing that Marianne Welcome kept citing, and I know as a teacher she feels passionately about this, well, there's 34 years of precedent that says you have to give us the 1.3. And you know, Marianne, I beg to differ. There's not 34 years of precedent. Matter of fact, there's no precedent of a Board of Ed covering up the fact that they've misappropriated funds, a Board of Education who hasn't had an audit in 2 years, a mayor helping the Board of Education cover that up, and everybody pretending that it's not a big deal. There's no precedent for that. And you get in front of a judge and you explain to him all of that along with, and we were following the plan that they put out as what they wanted to do to run the school district. We're not going to get to a judge. I think the State Board of Ed is going to say, and I hope they say, these people here, this Board of Ed, they have to go because they're not making decisions that are in the educational interest of the children. Because to fight with the Board of Selectmen for simply more money with no accountability, that's not in anyone's interest.
Right.
Well, maybe if they won't remove them for not doing their job properly and hiding, maybe they'll remove them for saying that they wanted to shoot the Republicans.
Well, I shouldn't laugh about that because that was a horrible thing to put. It's a rhetorical flourish that just shouldn't be used.
Right. And I'll just throw out on the table, as we said a million times too, is the impact to the town without the audit is that
It's frozen.
we can't borrow money.
Right.
And a major part of what the Board of Selectmen does is act as the Board of Finance.
Right.
And again, this does keep circling back to money.
Right. It's all central to one thing.
You either do
money.
You either do it right,
Right.
or you do it wrong. And if you're doing it wrong, you got to correct it. And that's kind of been our mission. And I just, I'm shocked, to be honest with you, that you have conversations with people and you just kind of get a blank stare.
Well, government is about pooling resources to do things cost effectively that people wouldn't do as effectively on their own.
Right.
And instead we're pooling resources and pouring them into, down empty drains in buildings that are 2/3 empty.
Right.
And then saying, but just give us more money.
Right.
I mean, no one can work that way.
Right.
Nobody functions that way in their regular
No.
life.
And the reality is that these changes that we've talked about and the efficiencies that are there staring us in the face, and we've said it time and time, if they don't take advantage of them, we're going to be back here next year or the year after, whatever. It has to happen.
Right.
And I think our mission, or our goal is just to try to get some discussion and action on trying to get some of these things, going, because it's in our mutual interest that we start to do these things. Because once we get past this, we do have to work together. I think that's been our goal. We've reached out on a number of occasions to try to get some dialogue between the two boards and move forward, figure out what we can do, move on from there. But the letter from Danahy coming home, basically advocating for the Board of Selectmen to be seated one way.
Right. Well, in the first paragraph, I mean, it says if the board stays, situated the way that it is, that we're going to be in big trouble. I mean, where does he get off sending them a letter to the parents about political stuff?
Well, it was at the Board of Education's direction.
They directed him to do it.
That's what I.
But then I think just as damning as that, or maybe even more so, and I didn't see the article, but I heard about it. He was. And I forget which paper it was, whether it was a Citizen, the Republican. They had asked Danahy why he hadn't
dealt with the mold.
Dealt with the mold immediately, or maybe the day after, instead of waiting 11 weeks.
Right.
In his response, and this is it's not a direct quote, but it was something to the effect that, well, they didn't want to apply for insurance money because they were afraid that the selectmen would put it in a fund balance. We wouldn't get it. Yeah. I mean, this is ludicrous.
And this is I mean, that's another. We end up in that hearing in December, and that's another big strike against the Board of Ed and the superintendent, because we are sitting now 2 months after that storm, and there is no excuse for not having had the adjusters in there and had that building professionally cleaned.
Right.
2 months afterwards, children are going home and not being able to go back to school. Right. Some of the teachers are unable to work or on a lot of medication, and their response is, well, we're still studying the problem. Maybe it's the roof. I mean, this is a Board of Education that's entirely out of touch with reality. And the mayor and the deputy mayor are entirely out of touch with reality because they're helping them. They're supporting them, and they advocate for them.
I mean, if they did have a problem in the roof, I mean, it's a great big roof. I'm sure the whole thing was a leak, and it's probably contained to a small area. Well, why wasn't that addressed? They have in excess of $300,000 in a maintenance budget
every year.
Right. And they continue to I can't tell you what. I don't know what they do with the money.
Right.
None of us know what they do with the
Well,
money.
no, but I bring it back to, and this is your first administration, the OCR complaint. Mayor Welcome and her team and most of the Board of Ed, the current Board of Ed, were using that as an opportunity to say, hey, let's spend $40 million and rebuild all the buildings as new. Well, in the meantime, we faced a federal complaint because our building was not generally accessible. We didn't have handicap bathrooms on every floor. We didn't have handicap space for children to change for gym. It was not an appropriate space. And it wasn't acceptable that it wasn't an appropriate space. And that it required, instead of $40 million, about $500,000 to completely repair it, make all the necessary changes. And your administration said, you know what, we're going to fix what we have to fix.
Right. Before we had the feds in town.
Before we have people show up and start finding us. But we're going to fix what we have to fix. We're not going to take a problem and turn it into an opportunity to do something completely different.
Right.
We're going to address the problem that's right in front of us. And that's that's the issue here. Let's instead talk about, instead of closing a school building like we said we're going to do, instead of working under the law as it currently exists, we can't even get to the part where we're talking why our test scores aren't better and how can we spend our money better and maybe spend more money, but we have to first know what we're spending the money that we have. We can't even get there because they can't account for what they have. They don't want to tell anybody, and now they're actively covering it up.
Right.
And this has got to change. I mean, this election is really about, do you really want to have transparency? Do you really want to know what's going on? And do you really want to put ourselves in a position, let's know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and let's make a difference.
Right. Because if the election goes the other way, I mean, they've pretty much said that the first meeting or two that they're going to have is to...
There'll be a supplemental tax.
Yeah.
They'll vote on the land trust again. They'll give Laurel City revamp.
Yeah, Mike will get his $60,000.
I mean...
$85,000.
85. Yeah.
Well, and let's take a step back. The issues they keep focused on, again, these are all about money because government's about pooling resources and spending money effectively. The two things they keep harping on are the bus parking and the land trust. Now, on the bus parking, let's be absolutely clear. There was no $125,000 for the town. There was no money coming into the town. There was no money going into the fund balance. It was an analogy I think I was talking about with you. It was your neighbor comes to you and says, I want you to build me a guest house because I will rent it from you. But I want you to build that guest house, and I will rent it from you after it's built. You know, after I've lived in it for 3 or 4 years, then I'll start paying you rent. But you first have to build me a guest house. So you're going to go out and spend $250,000 to build a guest house, to maybe get rent in 3 years. That's not a good plan, and it's not anything that's a benefit for the town.
There wasn't anything good about it.
And then the land trust was, let me rent out your house and let me have access to it. Let me tell you how you have to paint it, that you have to redo your roof, that you have to put a new entrance in for me, you have to put in a new bathroom, you have to do all this stuff for me. I get to tell you how to run your house. Oh, and by the way, the rent that I'm paying, I'm getting most of that from the neighbor on the other side. He also gets to tell you what to do with your house. I mean, who would put themselves in that position?
And then pay a tenth of what it's worth.
And pay a tenth of what it's worth.
And the number, too, that gets thrown out there, that it was 500,000, then it was 400, then it was 450.
I think I said it's like a chia pet. You put water on it, it grows.
Yeah, but
even the 450 that they said in the flyer. I mean, there was closing costs. I mean, this is one of the first select meetings that we had where and I was the one that said, if this is what you people want to do, you are responsible. The land trust are responsible for the closing costs, surveying, and there was several
$100,000 of closing costs at least.
100 grand. So they might have realized 250, 260. I think that's where we thought that it would be about. But we were getting a tenth of what it was worth.
Because the land, 360 some odd acres, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were
for a net return to the town of
250. Not 450.
Because let's be clear, 450. The land trust was getting 50 grand of cash. That was a good deal for them.
Right.
Now we've got 400. Now let's take another 100 out for the expenses. Now we're down to 300. But that's if the expenses, by the way, you're also paying for the land trust legal fees. Maybe it's more than 100 for the surveying and the legal fees and all the other attendant costs.
Right.
So, and the other thing that just overarching all this, even if you add up their two headline numbers, it's about $500,000. Again, they're not worried about $43 million.
Right.
They're not worried about the fact we may have to repay $2 million. but they're pounding the table for $500,000, and it wasn't. It was about $300 net to the town.
And the other one more thing about the land trust, you know, if we could look past the end of our nose, I mean, God forbid that something ever happened to that land trust as a group, their solvency or whatever.
6 of them.
The state would have gone back to the state, and I mean, we brought this up on several occasions. You know, just mention the boat launch. You know, the state's taken over control of that. You know, when we had an opportunity several years ago, and you know, I think that struck a chord with many people. But it's the same thing. You know, there's a lot of noise from a small group of people, but the majority, the overwhelming majority, thought that land trust issue was a terrible deal, because it was.
Right.
Well, and look, they had many bites of the apple. All right, they presented the project, it was voted down. They had a town meeting, not enough people came, they didn't have a quorum, it failed. They had many bites of the apple, but now the other thing that's a real problem in the terms of the way you guys have been forced to operate is when you say no, people have to say, you know what? You said no. I need to move on to something else.
Right.
I can't keep bringing back up the same 2 or 3 issues.
And that was a point that Dale Martin made pretty loud and clear when he came on board, that
Right.
you know, in order to be an effective manager, you make a decision and you move on. And
But it went in one ear and out the other. I mean, you know, they talk a good game, but you know, it's do as I say, not as I do,
Right.
type of deal. You know,
Right.
so because we know what's right. You know, you guys don't.
Yeah, don't, as you said, don't pay attention to my actions. Just do what I say.
And Marcia brought up a pretty good point too during her introduction at the debate, that you know, again, part of our job, and we've had some major issues come our way. Just because an idea comes up, you know,
You don't just say.
you don't just say yes because it's an idea. You have to, you know, like we've said a million times, you have to peel the layers back on the onion and take
Right.
a look at it. And you know, I said it a few times, say it again, that land trust deal was seductive. You look at the number, you said, you know, for doing nothing, here's a pot of cash.
Right.
You know, but when you take a look at it, and again with some of these other issues too, the fact is that when you make educated decisions about it, they weren't good ideas.
Yeah.
Mike Renzullo, you know, great guy, sitting selectman. He's got the initiative to go and do this stuff, but no experience, no funding, everything we asked for, business plan, you know.
No, you didn't ask for it. He sat there and told you. Sorry, I interrupted
Well, no,
you.
but we did follow up and ask
Well,
him.
and Glenn's right. I mean, after the 3rd or 4th bite at that apple, you know, I had put together, I think there was 6 items that I requested, and Dale said that he would meet, and I remember this meeting like it was 5 minutes ago. You know, George mentioned the idea that, you know, maybe we should put a selectman on there to sit with the town manager and the lawyers. It's like the last thing you want to do is politicize this more than it already is.
Right.
You know, Dale said if the selectmen have questions, email them, stop in and talk to me, whatever. I emailed him a half a dozen questions, and he thumbed his nose at every one of them.
Right.
And
He
these
being
were
Mike. He being
Mike. Yes, I'm sorry, Mike. I mean, and these were all pertinent questions.
Right.
You know,
Do you have a business plan? Do you
Yeah.
have financing?
the fun. He's the one that said that he could have a tenant in there while they were doing
The
renovation work, and I asked for clarification from Torrington Area Health. I mean, none of these things were, you know, pie in the sky or
Right.
out of the moon, you know, requests. They were basic requests.
And I know, again, good intentions, but I did ask Mike a couple times, do you have a backup plan if this tax lien doesn't go through? And he kind of vaguely answered that, you know, yeah, but I mean, he's had the building now for a while, and I think it's, you know, in waiting, but
Yeah, and I hope this is the paper and not Mike, but I think it's the in the Republican American today. There's an article about, you know, now he's looking to try to buy 10 Bridge Street again. Look, these buildings have to get redone. We've talked about this. This isn't a novel concept, but taking initiative is a good thing. But having said that, the article talks about how he doesn't really own Capital Products. Well, I got bad news. You actually do own Capital Products, and you do owe the town $85,000, and it's not imaginary money.
Right.
You also happen to have a lien to the IRS for about $300,000, a lien to the state for $100,000, and a couple of other company liens that add up to another couple $100,000. So there's some pretty significant baggage associated with that building, and yes, he does own that building now. The newspaper, I think, in one of the, as we've encountered before, they sometimes get things not quite accurate. So, in for a penny, in for a pound, but he sat in front of you in May or June and made his first presentation and said, I have tenants, I have financing, I have approval to have tenants move in there while we're remediating the site. You know, I'm good to go. So on that basis, you said to have the town manager and the lawyers take a look at this and draw up an agreement.
Right.
And in those conversations, you said, fine, I want to see your business plan, I want to see your financing, I want to see, you know, we need to see these things for the town.
Right.
And his answer was go pound sand.
Right.
And look, let's be honest, if he could demonstrate all those things, you'd do a deal. It would make sense to move forward.
Absolutely.
That was the direction.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with Mike Ronzullo. It has to do with whether you have what you.
And ultimately, that was the direction that we ended up taking.
Put any name on it. The name means nothing. You know, if it's a a good idea and it's it's something that's possible to go forward, not just a pie in the sky.
Well, and now with 10 Bridge Street, I have the sense from reading both of the articles in the Republican American and the Register Citizen. House for sale. I want to buy your house. Great. How are you going to pay for it? I'll get back to you. I mean, fine.
Well, it said right in the article that they haven't closed on it.
Yeah.
They have. Was it 60 days?
60 days. And if he has the couple $100 in the bank, he doesn't have the money to close. Those folks, that building is listed for over $300,000, and I don't think they're doing a trade for $1.
No, I don't think so.
So I don't know them, but I don't think that's happening.
And again, you're still going to have to bring in competent people that know how to do these projects, and
Well, and let's get back to what we've want to do. We want to find. We're committed to full disclosure. We're committed to doing things right. We're committed to telling you everything that's going on. So it's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we're committed to getting stuff done, and we're committed to finding real partners. We're open to all ideas, but they have to be ideas you can actually execute. Right. And yes, the thing I learned in my 20-year career in business and finance is that it's more important to say no to the things that make no sense or can't happen than it is to say yes, and because there aren't enough hours in the day to pursue everything.
Right, you're never going to get there.
Right.
And you know this from your business. You can't. People come to you and say, "I'd like you to do X, Y, or Z," and you have to sit there and say, "Well, is this going to make sense in terms of my business?" Or can I make it? Can I even make this happen? I mean, what Mike's trying to do is much more akin to what I used to do in my career. And people came to me all the time and said, "I got a great idea for X, Y, and Z," and you had to sit down and say, is this something we can really make happen? Can I convince investors to put money into this project? And there were a lot of times where you had to say no, and because you were doing them a favor, because it wouldn't do any good to string them along for a long time and have them incur costs trying to get stuff done if at the end of the day there was just nobody who had confidence to get a deal done.
Sure. And the fact is that there are developers out there that can do this, and we let one slip by,
who had $8 million
and a plan and a track record of doing this.
It was like the only thing they did
right here in the state, and I certainly thought that was a lost opportunity. But again, I think the viewers need to know. Yeah, I think the viewers need to know that it's not all about the Board of Ed. That's a huge part of the puzzle, but we do recognize the fact that our downtown has to be rebuilt. And as we've said time and time again, I think that we have the expertise among this group to go out and actively seek these developers and builders that are, capitalized, and they have a track record of getting projects done and doing them well. We need to get out there and beat the bushes and find these people.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, it's frustrating. The only reason that you're focused on the Board of Ed and we're focused on the Board of Ed is because without the audit, we can't do anything else.
Right.
So without real transparency, without real accountability, we're stuck where we are. I mean, Candy is fond of saying on all of this back and forth on the stuff with the MBR in terms of the funding, ultimately of the 1.3. Well, we have to do apples to apples. The money has to be exactly the same as it was the previous year. Well, no money comes out of the cash machine that says, I earned this mowing the lawn, I earned this,
Grandma's
paper.
$25 birthday gift.
My birthday gift.
Right.
Money is fungible. So, and let's be clear, we have taken in state grants and we will take in state grants over the course of the year that were not in the original budget. So they're not part of what was already accounted for, but they total more than $1.3 million. We want to use that money to pave roads and to work on getting downtown in shape. If we have to, if that hearing, and whatever else comes of that hearing means that some of that money has to be used for the Board of Education, then so be it. But that money's not going to come from a supplemental tax to you.
Right.
It is going to come from the state. But again, we want to get our financial house in order. We want to use as many resources as we can to grow the town, because, by the way, if we fix downtown and we grow the town, then there'll be more money to do the things like buy iPads, buy books, redo the buildings the way we need to do them, that kind of stuff.
And once people see that vision, and I think that's incumbent on us to try to articulate it as clearly as possible. We can sit here and, have some big grand plans, but I think ultimately, like we've said in our first 90 days, we need to roll out specific ways and methods, and we're going to go out and get some of this stuff done. I know we're prepared to do that, and I certainly hope that the voters have faith in our group that we can get some of these things done. And
during the wee hours of the morning last night, between 3:30 and 5:30, when it was just Dale and I in the kitchen at the shelter, we had a good detailed conversation about the idea of, he would actually really welcome the chance to dig down deep into, okay, this is how we do public works. Who does it well, in the state of Connecticut? What are the rules, that make it possible for us to copy that or not?
Right.
Where are we in our contract negotiations? How can we build on what we have and make it so that we get the best services for the best price? And he's got a lot of good ideas. We talked about a lot of stuff back and forth. He does bring a wealth of experience, given both his background in the military and his background as a town manager in Michigan. So he's got a lot to bring to the table, and he welcomes that opportunity to sit down. And it's Public Works, it's Town Hall, and quite frankly, the Board of Ed has to do the same thing with the education system. They have to join hands and start talking about how can we do these things efficiently, because the idea is to free up money to spend on things that we all want to spend money on. We all want to have the kids have new technology. We all want them to have better textbooks. If hard books are the way they're going, or Kindle Fires are the way they're going, we all want them to have better programs. We all want them to have more field trips. Everybody does, whether it's my child or my neighbor's child. Everybody wants that. But we are dealing with finite resources. It's like you come home at night for dinner and you only got what's in the bag. You got to make dinner out of what's in the bag. You can't go, I really wanted that prime rib, but I didn't have the money to put it in my bag, but that's what I wanted. Right. You need to work with what you have.
And I've kind of said to myself, like, the taxpayers kind of getting to be like an endangered species. And they really have. They've been, picked at for so long that there is just so much money, left for people to pay more taxes. And I think any efficiencies that we can build into our local government, both on the education side, which takes up, 2/3 of the budget, and the town side. Dale's got ideas, we have ideas, whoever has ideas to run smoother, spend less money, so that we can reallocate it towards roads, towards schools, towards, redeveloping our downtown. That makes sense. That's kind of what we're all about.
It's practical.
These are huge issues. Excuse me, that was hard to get out. Huge issues, but and it's in every facet. When we need to take care of the stuff that we have, whether it's a building, or the mowers, or the trucks. We had the sweeper deal come before us. They want to spend a boatload of money to fix a sweeper, and a lot of it was due to lack of maintenance. And it's the same thing with the schools. There's been a total lack of maintenance. I can remember not that many years ago when they mowed the grass at the schools. They mowed all the grass. They didn't leave it 3 feet high by the chain link fence. It really looks crummy. It really does. Right. Well, and it's unkept. The few flower beds that they had were always maintained. They're not. The sidewalks were messed. The parking lots. The parking lots were a disaster. Where is all the money going?
Well, and it shows a great contempt for that endangered taxpayer to take over $1.5 million in the last 5 years of maintenance money and spend it on God knows what. And And then this year, of all years, when people are still struggling, unemployment's still over 9%, taxes have gone up in the state of Connecticut, it is more expensive to live here. It is so contemptuous to say, we're just going to run empty buildings. We're just going to run empty buildings. We're going to have each building half empty. And now, not only are we going to run empty buildings, we're going to keep your kids in the moldy building.
Yeah.
I mean, that...
We're not going to take care of it. It's not going to look good. It's not going to be healthy. We're not going to maintain it. I mean, why in God's name would you even entertain the thought of building a brand new facility where they don't take care of what they have now?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
so we're going to spend 60, 70, maybe $80 million on a new physical plant that will look like it's 100 years old in, what, 3 or 4 years, because no one's going to paint anything, or they're not going to mow the ground properly or maintain the sidewalks. Right. I mean, why would you do... Listen, if my kids came to me and said they wanted something new, whether it was a bike, whatever, if they don't take care of what they had before, that's the last thing I'm going to do is buy them something brand new so they can leave it out in the rain or, just not take care of it. Right. They need to be responsible.
So that speaks loud and clear to accountable leadership. Right. And again, it's part of what we've used as a tagline, but it truly does, set the bar where, the people that are leading, the Board of Ed or leading the town need to be accountable. Right. If you're not doing it right, you need to be held accountable. And
you can't just have good intentions. You can't just be a nice person.
Right.
You can't. I mean, good intentions and nice people aren't going to get stuff done. I mean, we've had that for the last 2 years. I mean, as I was saying before, Candy's fond of the apples to apples thing. Well, the only thing that's going to be apples to apples, if you have the same leadership continue, is the town's going to look the same for 2 more years,
right,
or worse.
Right.
Nothing's going to move forward. Nothing's going to change. Yeah, Mike might own 10 Bridge Street, but he has no money. As a matter of fact, I doubt he'll own 10 Bridge Street because he doesn't have any money.
Right.
So nothing's going to change. The apples to apples will be the fact that we'll be in the same place 2 years from now.
Right. Right.
Except, hopefully by then we will have an audit.
But I would hope so.
This nothing's going to change unless we have real leadership and accountable leadership.
Right. I think the thing, getting back to the audit for just a second, and you mentioned earlier in the show, we need to know if it's $5, $5,500, or I hope it's not $5 million. But right at this point, the dollar figure really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I mean, it does. Don't get me wrong.
We need to know what it is.
Right. We need to know what it is. But I think the bigger problem is the fact that we've had to go to these extremes to find this information out. We need to have a better procedure where this stuff is done in a timely manner. I mean, we can't afford to go through this. I don't care if any of us are sitting here or the people that are sitting here doesn't make the difference. It's the people that are doing their jobs need to do their jobs.
Right. Which I think the town wisely voted overwhelmingly to allow Henry to be, involved.
Right.
Not
to assist.
not making decisions, but
go ahead. Yeah, and let's be clear. It's not. They didn't vote for Henry Centrella. What they said is, yes, we want you to run the town more efficiently. We want you. We're only a town of 10,000 people. We don't want to have finance directors in every division.
Right.
We want to have one finance director, and then we want to have people, to the extent departments are large, like the Board of Ed, that they have appropriate accounting folks in place who provide accurate, current, timely information to one person. Because we don't need to pay 2 people to do that, and we don't, by the way. The Water Board works that way, right?
Yes.
Henry is the finance director for water and sewer. They put all their numbers together, and then he makes sure they're consistent with everything else and that they're current.
Right.
And that's all you're asking for the Board of Ed. But it has to be by design at this point, because there's no explanation for why there's not good I'm sorry, the idea of, well, poor picked on us, we keep hiring business managers. You are paying $70,000 to $90,000 a year for someone in a finance director position, and it's not a huge amount of money, but it's not someone right out of college. And quite frankly, if you worked with Henry, or you worked with whoever's in Henry's chair, and for that amount of money, you could get someone who could responsibly cover that, put that information together for the school district. Other school districts do this. We were not at the vanguard of this.
No.
There
not
are
at
9
all.
other towns,
Right.
at least, that we found that do this.
Right, and I think, again, as we've said, that the town realized that. It made sense to have
Yeah,
Henry
3,000 people voted, 3-1 for.
play a role. And, you know, the first meeting we had, you know, to venture down that path, I mean, they couldn't put their hand up fast enough. And, you know,
You mean tell it to the hand?
talk to the hand. They wanted no part of Henry being anywhere near their business office at all.
And it was
Period.
an
End of
overwhelming
story.
vote of the townspeople. I mean, here again, there's just another slap in the face.
Right.
You know, we go through all this process, you know, with the charter revision, and, you know, we have a few vocal people that spoke out vehemently against it.
Including Marianne
Yeah,
Welcome.
well, she was, that's what I was talking about, you know. I mean,
She voted against it, yeah.
And when we had, I don't know, was it 3-1, 4-1?
3-1 was the vote turnout,
Yeah.
and it was the largest.
Yeah.
It was the largest referendum turnout
It
in
was
20
huge.
years.
It was huge.
Yeah, so that's, and look, given the emails that we now have,
Right.
they are covering something up. I understand why they don't want to give the information to somebody, but it's kind of like, you know, your kid did something wrong. He broke something. He doesn't know that you know that he broke something, and you're sitting there going, "Do you have something to tell me?"
Yeah.
And it's like at some point they have to come clean.
Right. But their reasoning for not wanting that to happen was that, you know, they didn't want Henry to tell them how to spend their money. And that
then-
couldn't have been further from what
No, absolutely
was
not.
proposed or
No.
what Henry would do anyway.
But that's like the letter from Danahy about 42 kids. That we don't want Henry telling us what to do. Henry doesn't tell you guys what to do
Right.
on your budget.
No.
That was a Trojan horse
Right.
to get around the fact that they don't want people to know what's going on. And the real issue is they don't know what's going on. Again, harking back to the debate, you know, Jim DeVita, best of intentions, completely uninformed guy. In the wrong chair, doing the wrong job, certainly shouldn't be a Board of Selectmen member. Can't bring those skills to the Finance Board. Sits there and makes the same old hackneyed diatribe, special ed's expensive, it's going up, it was more last year, was it?
But it
and
was-
I
Adjusted by what?
$2 million down in their most recent report. Yeah, Blaze had been telling him it was $7 million. He'd filed 2 reports with the state for the first 2 EDO1s for 910, 7.1, 7.2. Danahy, their new guy, files an updated, the latest, supposedly current, correct 2009-10 EDO1, and he says it's 5.3.
Right.
Adjusted down by almost $2 million. And when I said that, Jim just stared at me.
Right.
He doesn't even, as we used to say in my old job, he doesn't even know what he doesn't know.
Right.
And I would actually challenge him to tell me any number on that EDO1. I don't think he even knows the top line number. But you know what? He's not the only one. I think if you went down that Board of Ed, because they're all the Board of Finance for the Board of Ed, and you said, how much did you spend in 910? Total number, tell me now. What does Henry have for checks that you wrote? They wouldn't have a clue. I don't think any one of them, well, maybe Sue Hofnagel has a clue, but I don't think that in general they have a clue. I mean, he parroted off that same old special ed so expensive, out of district so expensive. He didn't even know what the numbers were, and he was wrong.
Right.
Sorry, I'm shouting.
No,
now.
no, no. But I want to circle.
Passionate.
I want to circle back to the fact that the town recognized and voted accordingly that that was a smart, efficient way to use
yeah.
a resource.
Right.
And the Board of Ed killed it within a week.
A breath. Well, it's no different than the town recognized that, yeah, we should be closing a school building.
Right.
And they voted in favor of that.
Right.
But as soon as that meant, oh, but that means you get the money.
Right.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Well, they did swerve into a good decision moving the kids up to Gilbert. And
That was painful.
What? I don't think they swerved. I think you guys all were, and with Lisa's help, kind of encouraging them.
we did. And I think it's something that we can, you know,
No, take credit
take
for
credit for because
Yeah.
it was a smart decision. And I think, aside from the savings, the kids are getting a better education.
Absolutely.
And I don't
Absolutely.
think there's a parent out there. We did, you know, a lot of door to door, and we met people that had kids up there. And I would be hard pressed to find anybody that said they were unhappy with that result.
Well, there was at least, I want to say, it was more than a half a dozen, maybe less than a dozen, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there, families that had some students, some of their children were in the high school, and some of them were in either, you know, kindergarten to 6th, and they felt bad for the ones. I mean,
Kindergarten.
it was like, geez, you know, John's really enjoying 7th grade at the Gilbert School. Mary, on the other hand, is in 3rd grade, and we're feeling bad for her.
Oh no, we had 2 parents ask us, can you let Gilbert take over
The whole
lower
thing.
thing?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, so that was it was the right outcome, and again, all the painful back and forth among the Board of Ed members. I have to give Kathy O'Brien credit. She really drove that decision.
Right.
Look, they made other decisions that I don't think were terrific, obviously, or well-founded, starting with the law suing the town. But probably the most important decision is the idea that 7th and 8th got moved to Gilbert, because it's financially better for the town, and as importantly, if not more, it's great for those students.
Right. And we're here, you know, with viewers watching the show, and I just want to make it clear to everyone that, you know, we did turn some things down, but along with that, we made some good decisions for the kids in town, you know, moving to 7th and 8th grade. And again, I think the charter revision to, you know, allow the town, I think that was a good decision by the town. I am saddened that the Board of Ed didn't take advantage of it. But
well, the other side of the charter revision, though, the idea to open up the search and allow us to have somebody who didn't have to live here,
right.
I think allowed us to find Dale.
Yep.
You know, I think he's still early days, but he's showing great promise, and I think it was important to bring somebody who had ideas and vision from outside in.
Sure.
And that is the other overwhelming problem, I think, with the Democrats is they pound the table saying, well, Mike's a good guy and Mike's from here, so we should support Mike. Well, Mike doesn't have money. Mike can't get this done. Mike's never done anything like this before. We clearly need people from outside the community to make this work.
Sure. And I'll bring his name up because Art Bogan is a classic example of a professional in his field. He did, you know, however he came to us, and he's, you know, added a level of, you know, professionalism and knowledge of that.
Well, quite frankly, the Brownfield money would have just gone away without him.
Yeah. I mean, but there's a classic example of how, you know, if we can find the type of people that are good at what they do, we need to bring them on board, make them part of the team, and well, we did. You're right.
I was going to say, I understand that the mayor feels fairly strongly that she did that on her own, but I think you guys all as a group decided to do that.
Yeah,
I think
we certainly took advantage of what he brought to the table, and I think what we're trying to say tonight, you know, as far as downtown is concerned, there's other people like Art Bogan that, you know, do buildings and renovate downtowns, and the fact that, you know, we latched onto a brownfields expert. I think that was a wise decision.
Yeah, and then let's take a minute, because we've only got a few minutes left, to review a minute kind of what the vision is for downtown. We desperately need to do something with those empty buildings,
right?
And that means everything from find good partners and rehab them, or in the case of some of them, take them down if we can't.
Right.
Because we can't have the empty ghosts looming over downtown anymore.
I think we need to set a timetable, and, you know, we're either going to do something with it or take it down and have an opportunity to do something else with the property.
Right. And once you get stuff going too, I think that brings P&Z into the picture too. You know, there needs to be a rewrite of those regs.
Oh yeah, we have to have those.
Right. I think if we can get some projects going, that'll be an impetus for that to happen.
And they have to be regs that work, and they have to be flexible enough. Again, I give P&Z credit. I think between the newspaper and our program and others, they got a lot of pressure to get that steep grant parking lot, you know, over by the ball fields done. I think it's going to have a few more shrubs, but it's going to get done.
Well, it is. I think it was four parking places, and it's small in the spectrum of the whole picture, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
We had to stop stumbling over it, right? So we need to do those. We need to do something about those mills. We need to have a unified vision. We need to get more feet on the street, because we want the retail corridors. We want the existing businesses to get more and better customers, and we want more people to be businesses to be attracted to there.
Right. And you're going to get feet on the street with Carriage Maker. That's going to happen. So, you know.
Yeah, we need to use this summer to our effect, to our benefit. Between Carriage Maker getting built and the median being extended, we need to take advantage. Not just bemoan the fact that there's construction in town and traffic's slow. We need to figure out how to work with the downtown merchants and take advantage of that, and have it be a positive, not a negative for us.
And we won't forget the mural project either.
Yes, no,
that's a huge.
We need to get together with Ellen soon. I think it's basically money at this point. Although she's busily working on the actual artwork itself. I think she's been traveling around the country, focused on getting the pieces together. But at this point, I think we have to figure out what grants are out there. What can we do to be the most helpful? Because That's actually as much, if not more, benefit to us, her getting that done. I mean, as it is to I mean, by us, I mean the town.
Right.
And the idea of the American Mural, Whiting Mills, and the college, it's just such a happening great thing to have at that end of town.
Sure.
And that means we have to do something about parking.
Yep.
And that's government's responsibility. We need to figure out how to pull that stuff together and make it happen.
And I think that's where Dale will come in, because he's said to me time and time again, he wants to work on town stuff. He wants to get the rest of the stuff behind him. And I do think he brings a level of enthusiasm that is absolutely needed. And
well, who wouldn't? I mean, I guess there are some people that just want to sit back and, you know, let the days roll by. But I mean, he's a young guy. He's energetic.
Yeah.
He's aggressive.
Yep.
And you know, I think it's a good fit.
Yeah. No, and I mean, he's committed like we are to spending smartly and spending efficiently and figure out how to do things. We're not going to do everything perfect, but let's talk about it.
Right.
Again, the good, the bad, the ugly, my favorite phrase. But let's figure out where we are and let's get it all on the table and make a decision and go forward.
Sure.
We literally need to make decisions and go forward. We've been stuck for 2 years, and if we don't change the leadership, we'll be stuck for another 2 years.
Right. I agree.
And at the end of it all, we want to have more money to be able to invest in the town. Everybody's got their own favorite pothole. I think with the exception of 263, which the state kindly redid for us, and Wetmore Avenue, which the feds redid for us, everybody's got their favorite pothole, and we need to make that go away.
Right.
So I think we really want to look to the bright future that exists for Winchester and Winstead. But make no mistake, the first step in that bright future is getting our financial house in order.
Right.
And once I guess I'm quite frankly begging Sue Hoffnagel and the Board of Ed to come clean as soon as possible, to so that we can understand what we face, and we can address that issue. And you know, a vote for us is a vote for transparency and hard work, and you know, spending your money wisely.
Right.
And getting something done.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it will get easier.
Yeah, I think once you get that first, you know, once you really get that first mill building in process, it's going to be a nice catalyst. And look, the timing is good. Election years, financially, economically, economy in general, presidential years are always good years. The market, the stock market does better. People that are, you know, sort of moving in the right direction, their towns tend to do better. So the timing is ripe for us to do this now.
And we held taxes even for people this year. Again, I mean, it's a tough economy. People worked, laid off. You know, I think that was a win for, you know, common sense, especially in you know, times we're in right now. So once we get some, you know, building and development going, I think it's going to bring more money into the town, obviously, to build and invest in other programs.
Yeah, and I think the most important message that we leave you with this evening is to remember to vote on Tuesday.
Yes.
At this point, again, power should be up for the whole town in the next couple of days, so we anticipate that the voting will be at Pearson School, as it always is. And we look forward to seeing you there.
And we'll be back.
We'll be back Monday night from 8 to 10. We have one final, you know, program with updates. But again, thank you for joining us this evening, and you know, we look forward to seeing you. We will be out this weekend.
Hopefully Karen will feel
During
better.
hockey
She'll be able to join us Monday
Yes,
night.
yes.
She's a little under the weather tonight, but
Stay warm, everybody.
Stay warm and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
good
Thanks.
night.